Welcome to this video. This is about the 7th match game of the Carlsen Anand match currently played in Sochi. Game 7. In game 6, Carlsen scored a win to take the lead in the match. This really remarkable game with this double blunder where Carlsen gave away the game basically on a silver plate, but Anand didn't recognize his chance and then subsequently lost the game. After that, we now continue the match with another white game by Carlsen. After 6 games at the middle of the match, so to say, they switch they switch the colors in a way, and there are 2 subsequent white games by Carlsen. So game 6 white and game 7 white again. The reason is that after every 2 games there's a rest day, and they want to make sure that after the rest days both players have white and black the same amount of time. This is actually quite a logical thing that was never really thought of in previous matches. They do this for a number of years now, but it was never thought, let's say, in the 80s or earlier. Okay, let's see what happened. We have again e4. It seems that Carlsen is staying with this move for this match, and Anand playing e5. Okay, so we got a surprise. Again, we get a Ruy Lopez, and Anand is playing the Berlin again. So the same opening that he had put his trust in game, let me think about it. This was game 2, right? Was this game 2? It was game 2, the game that he lost. And Carlsen now plays differently. He played d3 earlier in this mentioned game 2 that he won, but now he plays castles, so actually allowing the Berlin endgame. This is certainly one of the most topical lines in Grandmaster chess in the last, let's say, 15 years. But it really is nothing that excites spectators very much, and to be honest, also not the commentator. We get the notorious Berlin Wall endgame that arises here after black takes the queen on d8. This endgame, it is a big problem for 1e4 players nowadays, and it's really tough to get anywhere. I must say that I never looked at this from the white side. What I did is, years ago, when I started to play 1e5 on 1e4, I started with actually playing the Berlin as a somewhat time-saving option as black, and only later switched to a6 and other lines in the Ruy as black. And I always thought that this endgame is a very serious option for black players, even on a non-grandmaster level, because it is still a somewhat interesting position, something that you can play. However, on the Super GM level, they have analyzed this so deep now that you can hardly play it and just get a game. Let's continue a little bit. White played h3. This is a normally a useful move in those structures. It prepares g4 at the right moment, and also has some other positive effects. For example, it provides a square for the bishop, things like that. Knight c3 and h5. One of the numerous setups that black is playing, and this is also a problem for white. Black has so many different setups that he can play. Bishop f4, bishop e7, rook d1, bishop e6, all very normal. And one big point of this h5 move is that it makes very difficult for white to ever play g4. What white wants to do long term, he wants to use his pawn majority. He's got 4 against 3 on the king side, but it's very difficult to get this majority in motion, as the light squared bishop is such a good blockader, and this light square blockade is emphasized with h5. Knight g5 now is played by Carlsen, and Anand replies rook h6. All this has been played a number of times. The idea of this rook move is, of course, that if white now decides to capture, we can actually retake with the rook and make sure that our pawn structure is not changed. The pawn structure with, okay, here the capture is making no sense whatsoever as the rook hangs. But in general, if we look at the structure, this is a structure that black normally wants to avoid, getting this pawn from f7 to e6. So it's a good idea to play rook h6 to make sure you can capture with the rook. Yeah, Carlsen now played the move g3. Yeah, this is a preparation move for what happens later. It also makes sure that if black plays h4, we have g4 easily available. Bishop takes g5. A very drastic decision by Anand, but very often this trade is something that black welcomes, trading the dark squared bishop against the knight. The reason is that now we have opposite colored bishops, and this means that black, or not the opposite colored bishops, but it means that black has two blockading pieces on light squares, while white has a dark square piece, which is not really helpful in the advance of the king side. However, we are already talking about very concrete things here. After h4, this rook is trapped. Yeah, white is simply doing this if black is not reacting. So black needs to go f6, and he did so. Takes. Bishop f4, all this is forced. And now knight takes h4. So black has won a pawn here on h4. And yeah, at first when I saw this in the broadcast, I was a little bit irritated because they played it so fast. Yeah, of course, the reason for the quick play was that it is all a known position and has been played before, even more than once. Yeah, Carlsen now played the move f3. Slightly mysterious looking move, but I think the next couple of moves make the idea clear. What white wants to do, and this is really a good idea, wants to play king f2 and then rook h1 to pick up the h5 pawn. And this is happening in short order. White is a pawn down, but he will get it back on h5. However, after rook d8, in order to get this on the board, he here had to give up the a2 pawn. Oh, quite funny. And this really was still played almost instantly. They reached this position with both sides having spent about 15 to 20 minutes. So it was mostly playing the moves out, writing them down, and briefly checking, okay, are we still on the right track? So it seems that both players knew the position. In fact, the move g4 was played only a couple of days ago in a tournament in Tashkent between Giri and Rajabov. We can go forward up to here. In this position here on move 25, yeah, so we're really deep into the game. Here, where is it in my notes? Here, Rajabov, of all people, even he is playing the Berliners black. Isn't this terrible? He really played lots of interesting lines against the Rui, the Schliemann Gambit and so on, and now we see him play the Berlin endgame. Yeah, he played f5 in this game against Giri, and after g5 they had a somewhat different type of endgame. White is a pawn down, but he has some serious compensation in terms of, with the active with the more active pieces and this dangerous g-pawn. It seems, however, that Anand had a different idea in mind. He played knight f7, and I'm totally sure that he knew about the game. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty clear. Knight f7 is what Anand played, and now knight e3. And this is really a rare case. I mean, I really don't want to be disrespectful or anything, but this is a rare case of a good Carlsen opening preparation. What he's now coming up with is really a great plan. Here, Carlsen and his team, they had envisioned an interesting idea. And the idea is that the knight will be transferred all the way to h5. And this is a really nice idea. The knight on h5, or let's say on g3 first, will really put enormous pressure on black. We see this happening now. Knight comes to f5, c5. Yeah, black couldn't take. Yeah, that's important. Yeah, because this is a double attack. So this knight is really a problem piece for black. Yeah, c5 was played, not the capture. And now Carlsen went back to g3. Yeah, and here we come to the situation that I described. White now has a nice pressure for his sacrifice pawn. There are many ideas that are really annoying. The toughest one in a way is when the knight comes to h5. There's also simply the idea of moving the bishop somewhere, I'm not sure where, and then knight f4 back for a fork on those two pieces. The position is really not easy for black to play, and it turned out that Anand now took quite some time to work out what he does next. And I think what he did now with knight e5, he was already envisioning what happens later in the game. Knight e5, and Carlsen played this check. Yeah, instead of knight e5, of course, black could have done other things. Yeah, like b6, king d7. But as mentioned, the knight will come here, and it's really not so clear what black should do. Many problematic ideas. Yeah, even sometimes the capture can be an idea, and then knight f4. Black really has a hard time to defend this. Also note that he's totally tied down to defending his weaknesses, yeah, especially f6. Yeah, I think that Anand's move is actually okay, but it really involves a very radical transposition, and well, we see this we see this later. Okay, let's jump back to the game. Knight e5 was the move. Yeah, Carlsen now gave this check. Rook g8, bishop e5, neat little tactic. Of course, black cannot take here because this will pick up the rook in the corner. So f takes and rook h5. Very interesting position now, and I think this is what Anand had seen when he decided to play knight e5. In this position, the normal looking move is rook f8, I guess. Yeah, black has to do something concrete. If he's not doing anything concrete, then white will just take this pawn and then have two connected passes. This is really nothing that black wants to play. So rook f8 is the most normal looking move. The thing is that after king e3, again rook e5 is threatened, so bishop d5 must come. And then we pretty much by force get to this endgame. And this is quite interesting. If you look at it with the computer, it will only give white a slight advantage, but probably this is a position where black is in grave danger of losing. It's simply a case where the computer is not calculating deep enough. It's a matter of calculation time, of course. But those pawns, I mean, this is something that a human can judge pretty intuitively. Those pawns are more dangerous than those pawns, simply because they are more advanced, and the white rook is doing a good job and keeping things a little bit back, while the white pawns can march unhindered. This is a very critical position for black, and very hard to avoid once you go for a rook f8 in this position. Anand played differently. He played a very radical move. Instead of rook f8, he took on g4, just sacrificing a piece. This is a very brave move, really. Yeah, what happens after that? Okay, white takes it, of course, and rook e5. Yeah, b6, black has to keep the pawn. Yeah, so this was what Anand had in mind. He's going to a position where he is a piece down for two pawns, but everything is on the same side of the board. We've got 4 pawns against 2, And black has the king near his pawn, so the king is a useful defender of the pawns. A very important point is, of course, that white cannot win with rook and knight against rook. So simply trading stuff down and trying to simply liquidate our pawns won't win the game. What white needs to do, and we might as well go ahead a couple of moves, because this is kind of clear what white did. He brought the king over somewhere around here. We can start to look for plans. Yeah, the thing is that it is pretty clear that white does not have many plans in this position. The only very apparent thing that there is a combined attack against c7. But how exactly is he going to accomplish that? Yeah, you can put a rook on the 7th rank and then try to maneuver a knight near the pawn, but that's not difficult. That's not easy to do. Knight cannot easily come to d5 or come to e6. So a very difficult position to win, and maybe an impossible position to win. Let's have a look what happened in the game. Yeah, white is trying to activate rook on e7. And now the next try is to get a knight somewhere to d5. The thing is that even if you get it to d5, it's not very often helping you, as you don't have any support. Something like that is leading nowhere. Those little ideas help to save black. It is difficult really to evaluate this endgame with complete certainty. I think with enough time, probably there will be a definite answer. The general the general opinion of most watching grandmasters was that they found a draw more likely than a win, but they weren't really sure. So let's see what happened in the game. King c3. I think this is, can be looked at in more detail, but a lot of it is just a little bit of marking time and just poking around. Here we come to something committal, c4. I think probably that white cannot do without the move in the long run. The main reason is that you want a post on d5 for your knight, so that the knight on d5 in connection with the rook can actually, can set up this attack formation on c7. However, it is not clear that it brings much. As we see, Anand is ready to play b5, and probably this is the right decision. He is now ready to advance his pawns and try to trade pawns. Ultimately, of course, black wants to trade all the pawns, but with b5, this is a really committal decision, because it weakens c5 a lot. So it could happen that this pawn will become a fatal weakness, but it seems that he has judged this well. In the game we see that Carlsen gets his knight to e4, but ultimately he couldn't get anywhere near c5 a second time. Can only attack it once, but the rook on the 5th rank, this is why the rook h5 move was good. This rook is just protecting this, and black has a counterplay, of course, with his king. Rook e4. Yeah, and somewhere around here we come to a key moment. Anand gave a couple of checks, and here it is very important that he judged the next move correctly. He now captured on c4. A very ugly looking move, but on concrete terms it is the right decision. Let us just look at the two possible answers. If white takes with the b pawn, black has a relatively easy game. He just goes here, attacks the pawn. So there is this idea. And also, of course, and more importantly, the a pawn now has a very easy task. It just starts to run, and will be difficult for white to stop. He has to really give up the c4 pawn probably to stop the pawn in time. So taking with the pawn is really nonsense. Rook takes e4 was played in the game. Yeah, and now we see Anand's idea. He played rook to g3, attacking the pawn on b3. Knight takes. Looks good, yeah, but king b5, rook c2, and a5. Yeah, and the thing is that he has calculated correctly that king b4 will net enough counterplay with this idea of playing rook c3. A very good and precise calculation. The thing is that white can never move his knight, as b3 then is falling directly, and there is absolutely no way to improve upon what happens now. Carlsen played this, rook to the side, rook c1 marking time, king b4, king e2, rook c3. This was impossible to prevent, and it means that now white doesn't have any choice. He of course cannot trade the rook. If he would do that, he has no way to prevent this and the pawn capture. So after rook c3, there really is only what happened in the game. Knight d3 check, king takes the pawn, check. Oh no, he went rook a1. And we get to this endgame now. Black has managed to trade all white's pawns, and this means he's basically safe now. The best that white can now achieve is rook and knight against rook, which is a draw. In fact, in the game, they continued this for quite a long while. We can do this quite quickly. Yeah, black really has no chance to avoid losing the pawns, but it's not a big deal. I mean, you rather want to jettison the pawns quickly to get to the 50 move rule. And of course also the c-pawn was falling. Yeah, and we had a couple of more moves even. We are now on move 110. And it continued a while. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. And here Carlsen called it a day with rook c1, allowing the rook trade. Yeah, theoretically speaking, could have played about 30 moves more, but rook and knight against rook really is a total draw. There are cases where the extra knight side won, but this is mostly in situations where there was no increment, and there was the defending side really had no time on the clock, and at some point ran into a fork or some silly business, which is not happening here as they play with a serious time control. Yeah, what to make of this game? We had a long theoretical discussion, about 25 moves were already known up to this point, if we jump back here, and it seems to be a position where black is really suffering a bit. So in this case, really a successful preparation by Carlsen's team. I think that it was a very brave and I think correct decision by Anand to go to this endgame. I mean, maybe some analysts will find out that there is a win for white, but I mean, I doubt it, but maybe there is one. But in practical terms, I think this was a much better chance to defend than to go for this race situation endgame. Yeah, this kind of thing that I showed. Here, it's maybe possible that black is just lost. And in the game, he could always fight on. So a draw in this game, no change in the match. I think Anand can be satisfied with this. It wasn't fun to defend all that, but to do so successfully is also something that can give you a little bit of a boost. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. It wasn't the most exciting of games, but still, it's part of the match. And I think also an important point of it. Now that Carlsen has had two whites, Anand is back again with a white game tomorrow. So this is certainly a situation where he wants to try to win. Okay, thanks for watching.